Jason Rzucidlo reporting inside the Masonic Temple in Detroit for a meeting of the Detroit Economic Club. The editors from Time magazine are here to wrap up their year-long coverage of Assignment Detroit.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our distinguished panelists. And Devin, take it away.
Thank you very much. Am I a popular author of children's books if they didn't know that? I'm tickled to be here as a part of this because I found this to be one of the really fascinating experiments in journalism. Nothing quite like we've seen before. To start, to borrow a line from my buddy Bernie Smilovitz, we've got highlights. I want to direct your attention to the video screen if we could. We're going to watch small pieces of video to start this off to kind of set the tone for us. This is from CNNMoney.com about the challenges in Detroit. And I thought, for starters, and John, why don't you tell, I think most of us in the journalism world always have an uneasy relationship with the idea of helicopter journalism, where you drop into some location, spend 48 hours there, write a story that's dispatched to the four corners of the world, and all of a sudden it's taken as this comprehensive almanac of life somewhere. You wanted to circumvent that old idea and really commit to knowing a place. Talk a little bit about what led into this project being what it is, and then how your expectations were met or exceeded.
Okay, thank you. I think that it's important to look back a year and a half ago and remember what the world and the country felt like a year and a half ago. I mean, we've just seen in an election year now. If we had to characterize how the country feels now, I think the one word you would come up with would be angry. Regardless of where you sit on the political spectrum, the election shows that the country is angry. But a year and a half ago, the country was afraid. And it was, I would say that the word...
We're going through the 5 steps here.
Yeah, exactly. A year and a half ago, the country was really afraid. People in my industry were afraid. And you saw fear everywhere you went. But when you came to Detroit, and I've been coming to Detroit off and on, for 40 years. But it was the first time that I ever came to Detroit and saw fear in people's eyes, important people's eyes, big executives in charge of giant companies, people who own homes that they raise their families in. I went back to New York, and that stuck in my head, and I sat down and talked with a couple of colleagues. Rick Tetzelli is here today, and Dan Obrant, who were up here and couldn't be here today. We started talking about it, and I said, I don't know what I want to do about this, but Detroit is a place that I've never seen an American city, and I pride myself on having been to virtually every city in America several times, doing a lot of helicopter journalism. And I don't want to pretend like there aren't journalistic institutions today that have they have bureaus in Detroit. They've been committed to Detroit for a long time. People cover Detroit. We weren't pretending like we were inventing coverage of Detroit. The idea was there's a story there that needs to be seen through a combination of outside eyes, but we need to go in and get some kind of stake in the place so that we're more committed. And I think it was Rick Tetzelli who said, why don't we buy a house there? To which we all laughed. Yeah, we're going to buy a house in Detroit. Perfect move. And probably my greatest contribution to this whole project really was talking our CEO into buying a house in Detroit, because I remember that when I went in to see her, I said, I need to see you about something very important. What is it? I want to buy a house in Detroit. She said, you personally? No. I want the company to buy a house in Detroit. And I explained to her why. Why buy a house? Some people call that a stunt. In a way it is a stunt because it does attract attention to the effort, but in another way it isn't a stunt because it's where all the journalists who came here to cover the various stories they did. And I would like to point out that, as we say in this issue of Time, we did over 100 print stories. We did 3 covers in 3 different major magazines. We did more than 200 online stories. We had 48 videos on CNN Money. We had 750 blog posts. We established 11 high school journalists from all walks of life in Detroit, from affluent suburban schools to inner city schools. We had a Muslim, we had a Jew, we had blacks, we had whites. They would all meet at our house. So our house became a clubhouse. And you know journalists love nothing more than a clubhouse. And if you're going to have a clubhouse, you got to have somebody whose clubhouse it is, and that became Stephen's job. Stephen, the good news is we have a very important assignment for you. The bad news is you're going to live in this house, and you're going to attract a lot of attention, and everybody's going to focus everything they like or don't like about this project on you. You're the man. And that includes everybody from the next door neighbor to the newspaper columnists who say you're stealing their story,
In fact, let me get to Steve, because this is a perfect spot to get to where I think one of the most interesting things about Stephen's experience here were those first couple of weeks and months. Now, Detroiters by and large are pretty, shall I say, sensitive to what the world thinks about us and the way that story goes forth. But you found yourself surrounded by people who wanted to be arbiters of what you were going to be putting out, people who wanted to influence what you were going to be putting out, people who wanted to put the clamps on some ideas that they really didn't. Go ahead and talk a little bit about those first couple of weeks and months.
Sure. First, this did not anticipate the reaction of Detroiters to my presence in the city. It was sometimes wonderful. I wrote something very small that had difficult ways to find affordable fresh fruits and vegetables in the city of Detroit, especially in the neighborhood, the West Village area. And the very next day, someone showed up with a basket of fruit, vegetables, and jam. And it's fantastic, right? But then you also have people who show up at the house and simply complain about coverage that they perceive to be negative. And my response to them, besides getting off our property, was, I'm an outsider, proudly so. I feel like journalists are nomads by nature, and if you're doing your job, you're going to go to different places, different territories, different institutions, and you do your best to find the smartest people in the room to understand that place. And I didn't come to Detroit, just like I don't come to any particular institutions I cover with a set agenda. So every
But the people you cover, of course, have set agendas.
Of course,
people who invited you to, right? There were people who invited you to certain cocktail parties, believing they populated that party with people that you
the right kind of people.
The right kind of people.
Right. Yeah, there was one instance where I went to one party that was hosted to sort of introduce me to the city in Detroit, and the only way you could get into this party is if you the area, and I did, and I was told that I would change that. But the essential message from the hostess was, we want to let you know that we're here. And my response to her was, in this room, pretend that this very elite, educated, relatively affluent group is the norm in the city of Detroit. It's absolutely delusional. And it'd be very bad journalism on my part to pretend that's the limit. And I got the total opposite from folks who live across April, generally. So it was very tricky navigating that terrain as a journalist.
There's also the fact that you always have as a journalist when you're writing about somebody's town. That's it. I mean, any city, whether it's a boom story, a bus story, whatever, it's kind of like, I can say anything I want about my sister, but you better not say anything. And so you can sit around